Oh. Rush up and down. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start on time, hopefully finish on time. Thank you very much for coming along. As you know, well, most of you probably know and realise, my name's John Hocknell. I'm a former patrol officer in Papua New Guinea, and the series of presentations that I've been making so far are just some glimpses into the life that my wife and I led in Papua New Guinea, and everything that you've seen in the past. And if you come along on another cruise where there's maybe up to 9 or 10 presentations, everything is truthful, gospel, it happened to us, or, you know, we've researched the history. So today's presentation is about the cultures of Papua New Guinea, and in particular various customs and some stories, information about cults that they have in Papua New Guinea, and obviously some bits about cannibalism. What I'm going to do is to start this. There we go. And the precursor to the presentation, if anybody is sensitive in any way, you won't see things, but you might hear descriptions of things that might not suit your proclivity. So please be aware that there are things that are going to be said that may offend. Don't know whether they will or they won't. When I made the presentation about being going on patrol with the hard slog, and I said that we were sent off on special patrols in inverted commas. I talked about going and checking the mortar bombs that were left lying around. Well, one of the special patrols I went on through this sort of terrain. I don't know whether you can actually see there's another river we had to cross. But on this particular patrol, we went off looking for a Sanguma man, or a black magic man, or a witch doctor, or whatever. Now, in Papua New Guinea, the vast majority of medicine men and witch doctors are actually men. It's only just recently that women have been accused of being Sanguma Marys, and usually it's a bit of a pretext to actually get rid of somebody. In Australia, they used to have a law whereby if you beat up a homosexual somewhere, you get away with it by saying that I beat him up before he accosted me. That law has been scrapped. In Papua New Guinea, they're still able to kill suspected Sanguma women without any proof. Unfortunately, but they're actually slowly changing it so that murder regardless. So that's just a little bit about Sanguma men. You know, the sort of thing that you know, love potions and other bits and pieces. Well, Sanguma men are generally the hitmen. They're generally the assassins, and they have to dispose of people without other people knowing that they've actually been killed. There's no such thing as magic, so it just doesn't happen. So what they have to do, like a magician on the stage, is to convince you that what you're seeing is actually magic. And part of the tools of the equipment that these Sanguma men use are bull roarers. Now, the majority of people in the room know about a bull roarer and know what a bull roarer does, how it works. When Crocodile Dundee 1 came out, about partway through the movie, what's his name? Mick Dundee, yeah, Mick Dundee. Hogan climbs up onto the top of a rock and he hits a bull roarer and he swings it around and he makes the noise the bull roarer makes. When that film came out, I happened to be in Darwin. I went to the movies. And we were sitting in the movies on one side, and it wasn't by design, one side of the cinema, which is chock-a-block full of women and girls from Elko Island in Northeast Ireland. They were all in at a hospital in this particular hostel that they lived in, and they all bought tickets and they all went in, they all sat in this one section of the cinema, and they were really enjoying the movie until the bull roarer came. And when they heard that sound, you could hear the mumbling and gasps going on in the background, because they actually saw what made the noise. Now that was secret men's business up until that point, and in a split second, Skepsy or whoever it was that directed the movie completely shattered a big chunk of their culture by showing them that the noise was made by this piece of twirling stick. I've since done a bit of investigation, and when Mick Dundee was standing up there twiddling his arm, this is who he was sending the message to. Oh, let's just pause this, folks. I did ask for sound, audio. 2 seconds and it will turn off. No, it's not plugged in. We've got no...
Rex.
Sorry about this, folks. I'm
Bigay mo yung bill pack na
ang
iPad natin. Bigay mo
there it was gone.
bigyan. Yung pinapatay ko, hindi siya muna.
Take 2 seconds. Whilst he's getting that, I've been asked by a lot of people about pidgin English, and I'd like to ask you a question. You can tell me what English word this piece of pidgin English is actually the definition of. And it's a 3-letter word in English. In pidgin English it is Vilpilagadan or isabi puti mo kain wild something, na abos, pidgin, his, Natiwa, a Sapalaflawa one time. That is the pidgin English definition for an English word.
Rex.
And it's a 3-letter word. And it's zoo. Zoo. Zoo is Bipilagadan or Sari Putimo Kankan Wal Kantina. That's and sometimes when we're making the presentations, and various times, you know, when you're all queued up for tenders and there's wasted a lot of time and everything like that, I end up being in the room with people waiting for the tenders, so I actually tell the 3 little pigs in pidgin English. So I don't tell them what it is until I get through, and it's not until I go that they realise what I'm talking about. Quick as a flash. One for a time, people are like piggy start one boost. No, we walk about one boost. People are little pig or walk about one boost, and people are right on the dog can. People are right on the dog and mini. People are little pig stuff. One go fight on us. All right. Emma, I believe we've got some. Okay, folks, here we go. We're back at the bull roarer. Run out of power. Nothing happened. hopefully. Anyway, Mick Dundee is gone. Frightened of living daylight for all these women and kids. And the message is booming across Ireland, and it's going off to central Queensland, central Australia. This is who's receiving the message. Was it worth waiting for? So anyway, I just tried to lighten the subject up a bit. That's the bull roar, that's how it works. But anyway, aside from that, these are Papua New Guinean bull roarers, and what the Sangoma man does, the client will come along and say, look, you know, I really want to knock Fred on the head. Fred's been causing me a lot of trouble, and I want to knock him on the head. So the Sangoma man says, okay. The very first thing you've got to do is go and get something that belongs to Fred. And the more important, the better. So bear this in mind for a little bit later on in the presentation. So the worst thing the guy could do is to follow Fred around until he goes to the toilet and get a bit of hoof and bring that back to the Sangoma man. Right? That's the bottom. Or he might be sitting watching Fred around the fire and he's combing his hair with these big long combs and some hair might fall off. You can gather that up. Or he might be hiding his fingernail and he splits the fingernail out. If you can grab that. So anything's really close to the individual, you've got to grab these things. So he might be watching Fred, they're going through the bush and Fred cuts his leg on a branch or something like that and some blood on that. So he would get into important stuff, so get some of Fred's blood. Okay, so he takes this along to the Sangoma man, and the Sangoma man attaches it to the bottom of the bull roarer and attaches it to there's a nut in Papua New Guinea called a garlic nut. It tastes great, but it is also encased in an iron-clad shell, really, really hard to break. So he puts this bit of nut there and binds it on, and he gets his bull roarer and he calls out to the spirit of Fred. And then he pops the bull roarer down on a flat piece, table or whatever, and with again, all sleight of hand, he tweaks this piece of string, and when Fred's spirit is coming towards the bull roarer, it starts to vibrate. So the client there is standing watching all this happen, and of course he's concentrating on the bull roarer. He doesn't know what the witch doctor's doing, and in the meantime the witch doctor goes to get the special stone. The guy that was arrested for the murder using these things had found a tree that had been struck by lightning, and the sap in the tree had condensed into a very, very hard lump of sap. It wasn't as hard as a stone, but it was very pretty, all different colours. And this was his magic stone. So he's calling in the spirit of Fred. Fred's coming along, vibrate. Stone, whack, crushes the garlic nut and tells the client, that's it, spells cast, Fred's dead. When? It's in a matter of time. The client says, okay, well I'll give you half an hour and half an hour when he's dead. So he pays his fee to the Sangoma man, and off he toddles. No, the Sangoma man has to find Fred and kill him without everybody knowing how he's killed him. So generally what they would do is he would hide in the bush, and when Fred comes past he would get like the old cosh, the wet sock full of sand, and whack him on the head and knock him out. Not kill him, not leave any, not break any skin or whatever. Or he would slip him a Mickey fin. There's dozens of plants in Papua New Guinea that can render you unconscious. So he renders Fred unconscious, and then begins the process of killing Fred gently without Fred knowing about it. And this is what he uses. On a sago palm fronds, they're protected by these long spikes. You can see the spike here. That's probably about 8 inches long, that, or 15 centimetres in old money, and new money. And what the Sangoma man does then is he's got an unconscious thread, and he's got a couple of these sago spikes. He wipes out in a bit of excreta, and then he shoves it down behind it in the clavicle, the soft flesh here, right down into the body. Not hitting any vital organs or anything like that, straight down. And then he proceeds to get really nasty stinging nettles. And you know it's like when you get stung by a stinging nettle. Well, these are 100 times worse. But what he does is he rubs the body of Fred with these stinging nettles. In particular, paying attention to the clavicles. And obviously the skin blisters. So as it all blisters, any puncture holes here are covered up. So nobody knows, except Fred when he wakens up, he's covered over with these blisters from the stinging nettles. And the first thing he thinks about is, I've been got by the Sangoma man. And psychologically, he knows that he's going to die. What's actually happening is the doors have gone into his flesh, he gets septicemia, and in about 3 days' time, dead, finished. Client goes along to Fred and says, Fred goes along to the Sangoma man and says, here's the rest of the money, thank you very much, and good job well done. The reason we caught this guy, the Sangoma man, was that the body was there, Fred's body was there, and we took him to the hospital, and before we did anything, we whacked him under the x-ray of his chest. Inside the chest cavity was this single strand copper wire, not the insulation, just copper wire. So he'd gotten this really heavy duty copper wire and he shoved it down inside the clavicle there. So we were able to track back where this copper wire had come from to actually pin the guy that had committed the murder. He was arrested, we found all of his implements and everything there, he confessed to the crime, and he did 20 years for murder. So that's how a Sangoma man operates in the system. Now, one of the problems that you have, because everybody was thinking about Sangoma and magic and poison and everything else, you haven't. The other side of the coin is like this young lad here. This is Maboyo. He lived up in the hills, up in the mountains. His village was way, way up in the back here. And his mum and dad decided that what we're going to do is we're going to send him down to the coast to a Catholic boarding school, and he's going to get an education. He's got to have an education. Same time, Maboyo's cousin went with him. So he wandered off down, they went off down to the coast, and they were down there for maybe 6 months or so. And at break time, they were having a game of soccer. And the soccer got a little bit roughhousey, and Maboyo made a heavy tackle on his cousin. And his cousin jumped up and continued to run around, feeling a bit sore, and then about 5 minutes later, fell over dead. And everybody immediately said, Maboyo is a Sangoma man. He's put this witchcraft, he's killed his cousin through magic. No weapon, no nothing. He just bumped him, bang, dead. I was called out to go out to the Catholic mission, take a wooden box with me for the body of the young lad, and to arrest Maboyo and bring him in. So we arrested Maboyo, charged him with murder, and brought the body in, and called out to the doctor to come down from the van to do a quick autopsy. Now he did that, it only took 2 minutes for the doctor to open up Maboyo's cousin, and he found that the little lad, he was only about this big, he had a spleen in him that was 1.5 times the size of an adult. Huge spleen. And what had happened when Maboyo bumped him, spleen ruptured, bled to death, internal bleeding. So as far as the doctor was concerned, that was the cause of the accident. As far as the people were concerned, They didn't see anything, so therefore Maboyle must be Sanguma. The only thing that would stop them believing that was for the big judge, this is the guy with the red robes and the big wig, to say whether he was a murderer or not a murderer. So therefore he had to go to the Supreme Court for a trial. Now Maboyle lived in a little hut that we had in the bottom of our garden, and he stayed there for nearly 6 months until the Supreme Court came to the hearing. Obviously we went up to the down, we had the hearing, and at the end of the day the judge says accidental death, not guilty of murder, thanks very much, everybody goes back home to Sligo where we were living, and Maboyle breathed a sigh of relief. However, in Papua New Guinea it never ever stops there. There's always somebody somewhere who's going to say, yeah, but we know that's not true. So what we do with Maboyle, Morag and I, we had a look at our bank account and we could afford to, and we paid some money to send Maboyle from where we were onto an island outside of the bank called Kaka, where they had like a TAFE course. And we paid for him to do a residential course in making water tanks to become a solder, to solder water tanks, galvanised iron tanks. And then after we got his qualifications, well, off he went, and I did some checking about 3 years ago, and unfortunately Maboyle died maybe 10 years ago through natural causes, but he at that time was probably one of the best plumbers in the Milan province, so he went off and had a good life. At the time, those people that came and saw the presentation about building the airstrip, that's where Maboyle comes from. At that time when we were building the strip, I went out to see Maboyle's parents and the parents of his cousins, so there's 2 brothers and their respective wives. And I had a talk to them, and the thing that upset the cousins' parents was that they had no sons, no more sons. They had daughters, but no more sons. So there was nobody alive to look after them in their old age. So what I arranged at the time with them was for Maboyle's parents, who had plenty of sons, to actually let the cousins' parents adopt Maboyle. So basically Maboyle ended up replacing his cousin as the future breadwinner and guardian and carer of that family. So they then moved that. So at the end of the day, everybody was happy. Unfortunately, yes, there was a death, but there was no more Sanguma talk, no prospect of Maboyle walking down a dark alley one night and somebody jumping out and talking to him. So that's Sanguma. That's how the whole thing operates and works. And today we still talk to Papua New Guineans and say there is no such thing as magic, but they'll say, yes, we know that, but then we go away, that little niggle in the back says, well, it won't. So that's Sanguma, part of the customs and cultures of Papua New Guinea. We'll move on to cargo cults. There's a list of current cargo cults, and the top one here, Prince Philip movement in Vanuatu. They were jumping for joy the other day when they found out that Prince Philip had retired. They thought, no, he's got all the time in the world, he can come out and really get stuck into representing us, because he's their idol. So, and I think a lot of people in the United States might think the bottom one is definitely a bit of a cargo cult. I do. You turn something out of nothing, but anyway. So, that's cargo cults are generally, think of the Kardashians when you're thinking about cargo cults. How can you actually create wealth and everything else by doing absolutely nothing? And just get the publicity machines working and everything else. And that's what happens is you get one person who's the leader of the cult, and they will say, generally a man, they will say, if you do this, this and this, we were going to get all of this stuff is going to suddenly descend on us. And we're going to live the life of Rome. And these cargo cults are still operating. The biggest cargo cult in Papua New Guinea was run by this guy, Yali, Papa Yali. And this photograph I took of him in 1973. early in 1973, and the poor old man died in mid-1973. Now, he would have been pretty close to 80 when he died. But Yali, the way his cannibal cult started off and ended up, was that he, at the time, he was born in the 19th century, 19th century, right at the end of the 19th century. And the Germans were in power then, and they went around and they picked up lightly young men, showed a bit of talent, and they gave them jobs as policemen and the like. So the Germans left in 1914, and Yali was still wandering around as a young man. He learnt German, and they were giving him this work to do. And of course, the Australian/British administration went in there to look after German New Guinea, and they just grabbed what was in place and continued it on. So Yali ended up becoming a policeman back then. By the time the Second War came along, Yali was a very powerful policeman. He was a sergeant in the police force, and he lived in a place called Sidor. Now, I remember, if you remember the story about the mortar bombs and going out and finding the mortar bombs, exactly the same place as this. But Yali comes from this village, Saw village here, right next to Sidor. Now, as a prominent person there, when the war happened, it started, the Allies decided that what they would do is grab hold of Yali and put him in a submarine and bring him around to Port Moresby and then fly him down to Brisbane, because they wanted to get this sort of information from him. He lived there, this was his territory. How can we have a landing? Where are the reefs? Where is the safe place to come in? Get all of the information for a seaborne landing in this area. So they needed the knowledge. So they took Yali and one other guy from the other side of the dam down to Brisbane and pumped him for all the information he could give them on that area. So what happens is that the military intelligence gather all this information, but what are we going to do with Yali in the off periods? How are we going to show him, what are we going to do to convince him that he needs to convince his people to fight the Japanese so that we can win the war? So these people, back then, during the war, they had truck assembly plants, they had cannon factories, they had a whole host of things in and around Brisbane that were helping the war effort. So that the ships would arrive from the States and they'd offload all this cargo, and then it would be processed in some way or another. So they took Yali along to have a look what was happening and said, you help us defeat the Japanese and all of this can be yours. Now, those people were saying Papua New Guinea could have these sorts of things. Yali was hearing it could be mine. And so he thought, oh, this is good, I'll go on, I'll get all this stuff, I'll encourage everybody to do everything. But how am I supposed to get all of these people on side to fight the war effort? During the time he was in Brisbane, Yali had a little bit of R&R. And what the soldiers do on R&R, they toddle off to the local brothel and have a bit of fun. Now, Yali, it was an eye-opener for him, no less, but the biggest eye-opener for him was the use of condoms. He'd never seen one before, and he thought, oh, that's interesting. And then his mind, his pragmatic mind, is whirring away. So anyway, he had fun, stayed there, went 2 or 3 times, and then decided to send him back to Sidor to lead his people in defeating the Japanese. Now, they weren't going to give him, a truckload of machine guns and stuff like that. He had to go off and do the work himself. So they asked him, what would you like to take back to Papua New Guinea with you? And he said, a box of condoms, a very large box of condoms. So they packed it up. They sent them up to, I don't know, 12 dozen condoms or whatever. A big container of condoms and took back to Sidor with him. So Yali, obviously, this is his 40 years younger than he was then. He goes off and he starts to tell everybody to come in, listen to his story, because we're going to get all this stuff from the big Japanese. In the meantime, he sets up these little houses, puts plants and flowers and everything, and he installs a girl in each one. And these are his flower maids. So they have got to provide the service to the leaders that come from here, there and everywhere. They came from miles. They walked 4 or 5 days to get to where he was. And when they got there, they got their reward by going into the little hut to see the flower Mary. And the flower Mary said, oh, before anything happens, you've got to put this condom on. So they had no idea what it was. So what they did was put the condom on, no problem. Yowie gives strict instructions to the flower girls. When they leave, hang on to the condom. Hangs on to the condom and collects as many glass jars and bottles as he can. And in each glass jar, he puts a used condom. On the outside of the glass jar, he puts a mark to say, this belongs to Fred, this belongs to Joel, this belongs to Bill. Think back to the Sanguma man. What did they have to do to make the most magic, the most powerful magic? They had to get the most important thing to Fred, and what was it? It was a bit of blood. Imagine the power that Yowie had when he had this life source and all these bottles. And then he would then turn around to these guys and say, I've got you by the short and curlies here, fellas. This here, you don't do what I say and what I want you to do, then the Sanguma man's going to get you, and it's going to happen very, very quickly. I came off patrol one day, I went in and we still had them in the hut in 1973. Yowie had 8 wives. This is his 8th wife. And her sole job was to roll a cigarette made of tobacco out of a full sheet of the Australian newspaper. I mean, not the whole sheet of newspaper. They would rip it down and make this all-day smoker. So Yowie would actually suck on this cigarette. You'd only have 1 cigarette a day, but it took forever for him to smoke. And that's the young lady that used to make his cigarette. But Yowie operated this carnival cult for years. His son tried to resurrect it, and his son got arrested and sent to 25 years jail for a whole variety of charges of rape and prostitution and the whole box and bar. So the carnival cult never actually got back up again at the end of the war. But, you know, Yowie, for that period of time, was an incredibly powerful man. So we've done Sanguma, we've done the carnival cults, and I was supposed to have some finger food for you. So we'll get on to cannibalism. Did you read the bottom bit? Modern dietary requirements. Anyway, cannibalism comes in a number of forms, and this is the last recorded known case of true cannibalism in Papua New Guinea. It was when poor old James Chalmers and his offsider went onto the south coast of Papua New Guinea to celebrate Easter, and he ended up being the main course. And if you recall, like that cartoon I showed you, the Punch magazines and the like would come out with all these cartoons of different things, and inevitably it's somebody with a dog collar sitting in a big pot. So this is where all of those cartoons of missionaries being eaten by cannibals came from the stories that came out from this guy getting the chop. But cannibalism, like in his case, it was pure food. It was protein that they were after. There was no magical stuff. There wasn't a case of let's get one over on the white man by killing him and eating him. It was purely a matter of finding protein. So you've got that at one end of the scale, and at the other end of the scale, you've got a thing called mortification rites. And mortification rites are what do you do with a person when they're dead, when they die. You know, the Irish mortification rites, you put the body in the coffin, put it in the lounge room, and everybody gets drunk. I think that's a great mortification rite. But in this particular area here, in the Basavi, I got called out by a missionary who was complaining about these three guys who unfortunately had spoken too loudly, and other people heard them say that they had heard these three guys talking about eating somebody. It turns out that the village elder, the leader, knew that he was going to die, and he got these three guys together and said, okay, I want to pass on my authority, my power, my knowledge and everything to you. So he sat down and he went through a whole pile of secret names business with them so that they knew how to do various things. And then he said, for that to finalise that whole thing, you need to eat a part of me. So when the old man eventually died, they just cut a little cube out of his buttocks, put it on the end of a stick, popped it in the fire, brought it out, chopped it into three, and the three guys ate a little piece. And that was the mortification rite finished. They'd acquired all the knowledge, they'd acquired all the power that this leader had. So that's the way that particular aspect of it. Now there is the world's rarest disease is called Kuru, K-U-R-U. If you feel like Googling it, go for it. But that disease is caused by, and it's just through women. When a person dies in this particular one tiny village in the Eastern Highlands of Papua New Guinea, when a person dies, parts of the body are consumed, and the women eat the brain and the spinal cord. And this is where mad cow disease comes from. And as much as they put it in meat pies and people got mad cow disease. And they put the bodies of cows through the process of making protein and fed the blood and bones of cows, supposed mad cow disease. So that's how that all happened in that area there. And eventually they've knocked all that on the head. But in this particular village, the disease is transmitted genetically, and it can take 70 or 80 years for this particular disease to show itself, and it comes out as like a lacking sickness. The body goes into complete contortions, and the grin is this grin on the face. And it's just the women to get this thing, and there's no known cure. They don't know when it's going to happen, and they can't test for it. They can't say this person will or will not have it. So that's the world's strangest disease. I say, have a look at it. So that's a little bit of cannibalism. But one of the things that bugs me, and quite a few other people, I mean, the Papua New Guineans have been around, living quite happily for the last 7,000 years. They've got their own customs cults and all the rest of it, and they've been getting on all right, and they've got these mortification rites. Then you've got a missionary who wants to dob them in for carrying out these mortification rites and causing no end of trouble. I heard it, I charged them. The only thing I could find in the statute, because we operated at the time under the Queensland Criminal Code, the only thing I could charge them with, and it was Still in the Queensland Criminal Code until about 1986 was witchcraft. That was there in the Queensland Criminal Code, it's been repealed. And at the time I charged them with witchcraft, and the maximum penalty was $2. So I fined them each $2, and they went away quite happy. I actually, probably 18 months later, I'd left Papua New Guinea, and I was down in Adelaide, and I was reading the Sunday paper, and opened the centre page spread, and there's this big story. 3 cannibals convicted, 18 months each. It's these same 3 guys. And this missionary had not let it lie. He just persisted on getting these 3 guys sent to jail. Now, the thing that I couldn't reconcile in my strange brain was that these guys have been doing this thing for thousands of years. Along comes this trying to come lately with a story that's only 2,000 years old, and every Sunday he goes through this process. Now, you know, I can't reconcile that personally. That's my personal opinion, not P&O's. So there's 2 sides to every story, folks. And all of this happened in the Madang area. Now, the most recent cases of cannibalism in Papua New Guinea happened during World War II, when the Japanese were retreating from Lae and trying to get to Wewak. And they were being harassed from the air by Australian Americans, and the Australians were encamped in various places. If people have heard of Shaggy Ridge? You've all heard of Kokoda, but Kokoda is not anywhere near there. Shaggy Ridge is where that G is in Henganofi. It's at the headwaters of the Ramble River, and they actually look down the valley, and the Australians were up there on a ridge. Australians on one side, Japanese on the other side, and they were basically throwing hand grenades at each other across this ridge. And the idea was to stop the Japanese retreating from down here in Lae, through the hills into the valley there, to get to Madang, or possibly up to Wewak, is just above Angkor. So it was to stop the Japanese. So they were doing a pretty good job in that area. But this is where I was patrolling here. See where the V is here? You can see through me. Anyway, where that H is in Huon. This is a map of the patrol that I did, and then up the top is the coast. Right up here is the salt water, it's the sea here, and then we have to walk from the coast up to this village. First village here is 5,500 feet, and then do a bit of work, and then the following day we have to walk down to this village down here at 1,500 feet, so 4,000 foot, and it's almost vertical. You'll see it in the video come up. Then we walk along these various tracks, visiting all these villages, until we get round the end of this mountain range at the bottom here. And the goal is to get to a place called Tet Tet, which is down here, bottom left-hand side, and that's 6,500 feet roughly. At the time when I was inside, or the Japanese War Graves Commission sent a group of guys out who had actually fought in this area, and their job was to try and find as many remains of Japanese soldiers as possible, so that they could go through their register of war dead and find remains and tick them off as being found. Then they could go through whatever Shinto ceremony they did. They cremate the bones and inter them in a little monument which is at Sidor, so that they could then let the families know that the spirits of the dead soldiers were all being taken care of. And what the Japanese did, apart from getting drunk in my house, they would send a message out saying any remains of Japanese soldiers, bring them to us. Because we're talking about guys, this is 1973, and you know, they've been through the war, so they weren't spring chickens. And so bring the remains to me. So, and if you bring the remains to us, we'll actually pay you for them. We'll reward you for walking 3 or 4 days with the remains of a Japanese soldier. So the Papua New Guineans, being as pragmatic as they are, there was an awful lot of grannies dug up. And they had to be a bit careful. Height-wise, not so much of a problem, but physical skeletal structure, big difference between a Japanese and a Papua New Guinean. So they had to be careful what bones they handed over. Phalanges were good, because you really didn't know the difference who they came from. But a skull or a femur was, no, sorry, that's your granny, away you go. So they would bring the remains in, but one of the jobs I had to do was to take a representative of the War Graves Commission on this patrol. Now, I did the patrol, he didn't do the patrol. I got up to Tep Tep, and I was based there, and then they sent an aeroplane up with him. Now this will give you an idea. This is at the 5,500 feet, well the plane's 6,500 feet, and this is the ridge that we would then walk down, and you can see it's almost vertical. We have to go down this side, and this is the terrain that the Japanese were retreating through. And one way down there, so we had to walk down to the village at the bottom, do the work, and the following day climb up those ridges up to the other side. As the plane goes along, one village was left, we walk down there to the village at the bottom. As the plane goes up this gorge, the Yukon Gorge, it flies along, and here we come to a village which is above the altitude of the plane. There's a village at the top of the ridge there. So if they wanted to, they could throw sweet potatoes at it as we flew along, just out like it. So that was on one ridge, that was the first ridge, then there was the next one. There was a village on the top of each one of those. So we would go along through this gorge up there. Fabulous place to go for a walk. And it's all limestone. So this is just to give you an idea of the terrain that the Japanese had to go through. No food, very few weapons, raiding the gardens of the Papua New Guineans, and as a result of all of that that's going on, they ended up they committed cannibalism. There was a walking track to the top of the ridge there. So they were getting involved in cannibalism. This guy flew in, and he came to receive the bones and the like. The airstrip is there. That's where we're going, into that strip there. You've seen the TV program with all these idiot pilots flying around in Indonesia. That airstrip there is 15%. You know the biggest street in New Zealand, that's 15%. 200-foot landing threshold, 200-foot stopping threshold. The plane touches down and you accelerate and drive up the hill as fast as you can. So this is the sort of terrain that they would go through. This is the airstrip where we live. We live in a little hut at the top there. And they called in the remains of the people who bring remains of the Japanese in. Now, whilst we were there, one of the things that they did do on the coast, they actually brought with them an awful lot. This is landing at the strip. They brought an awful lot of bottles of Johnny Walker Black Label. And like the Russians, you open the bottle, you've got to drink it all. And this is where we live, and that's my house there. That's the house I lived in there. That's in Tep Tep. You can go and Google it, and you can look at YouTube videos of that place. So down on the coast, we looked after them. My wife's mother cooked for them, and my mother-in-law cooked for them and everything else. And we allocated them a house that they could camp in. And every so often they'd have a big feed, and they'd sit around the table. There was about a dozen of them there, and they'd invite us along. And my mother-in-law didn't mind a scotch. It affects me terribly. I get very sick drinking whiskey, but she was drinking by the gallon. And they'd open the bottle of black label and take a swig out of it, pass it to the next guy, they take it up, and just go round and round the table until the bottle was empty. The guy that was sitting next to me, he got absolutely plastered. And he's singing songs, and then he asked me for a piece of paper from a notebook, less than A5 size. And he proceeded to tear it into three. Then he proceeded to make a complete samurai warrior's armour out of this piece of paper, including the helmet. So I carried it around in my wallet for years. A tiny little helmet, tiny little jacket, tiny little pair of pants, all made from origami, made by a very, very drunk Japanese ex-soldier. But getting back to Tep Tep, when we went up to Tep Tep, people started bringing things in, and they weren't interested in Japanese helmets or bayonets or whatever, because they couldn't actually put a name to any of this. The Japanese didn't go and engrave the names in the back of the helmets or whatever. But this was brought along. This little badge on the left here, that's a musician's badge. And the guy that was there, when they produced this musician's badge to him, he just collapsed, he just fainted. And when we got him back conscious again, it turned out that that badge belonged to his best mate. And he was the only person in the particular regiment that had a musician's badge. So he now knew that, convincingly, that his best mate was dead, wasn't hiding somewhere. So he had this badge that he could then pick him off and go back, take the badge back to the family in Japan. Now, I don't know whether any of you have listened to Japanese flute music. It's definitely not melodious. This guy in his cups, in the room next to me, at between 1 and 5 o'clock in the morning, playing this Japanese flute, which has only got 4 notes. You know, I don't mind occasionally, no problem, but the Japanese flute music drove me to distraction. So the following morning I got on the radio and said, please, can I send this man back? Send me an aeroplane, because I need to get some sleep. It's 4 hours in total. But this will give you an idea. So this is the terrain that they went through, and this is this ridge that you saw earlier, but we went the other way. But this is where they climbed up here to the village at the top of the hill here, and raided the gardens there, and then they went to go through a gorge, and in this gorge there were 7 bush material ladders going down to the bottom of the gorge, and then across the creek at the bottom, and then there were 7 bush material ladders going up the other side. And this particular gorge is called 7-step. So the Japanese are retreating, they're going down these ladders. They either fell off through emaciation, they jumped, committed suicide or whatever. Those that got through and crossed the bottom, again they went up and they either fell off, jumped off, or when they got to the top of the gorge, they were met by the people from this village here, you can just see it, with a long bamboo pole. And as they come up over the ridge, they just started pushing these people off, the soldiers off. At the bottom of that gorge, they found the remains of at least 300 Japanese soldiers. They were skulls. They were people that, you know, they could definitely say it wasn't, you know, how many phalanges have you got in hand? 15 or whatever. It wasn't 15 people. There was 300 distinct bodies down the bottom of that gorge. But the Japanese had committed cannibalism all the way through that retreat. So that's cannibalism out of the way. Happened to get into very, very pragmatic people. One of the roles that we had was was healthcare and trying to get the people to actually try and improve the general tenor of healthcare in their villages, like building toilets and slip latrines and things like that. Now, in this particular area, in the Hella, they used to put the bodies in a box. And if you take the one when I showed you a picture of me on Independence Day, and I said, remember that little box? I'll tell you more about it. Well, this is it. That was the coffin up on the stilts. Now, those people that can remember the old cowboy and Indian films when John Wayne rides through the Indian cemetery, there's the body wrapped up and on sticks. Same sort of thing here. So the body's up there and the body decays. And then they take the body down, and I'll show you what to do with it in a minute. But what we have to do is to say, no, the way you've been disposing of the dead for the last 50,000 years, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You actually have to bury the dead. So I said, okay, well, we'll do that. We'll do what the government wants us to do. And these are the guys that have the yellow faces and the big wigs. This is from that area. This is a few more of the shots of these particular people. Oh, if you can see this picture on the right here, just as a matter of interest, down the bottom on the right-hand side, see these white things down here on his wig? They're white blossom scorpions, just to throw that in. So there's some more images of these guys from this area. But this is it. This is the coffin on the top there. So the body would decay in there, and then they would take that coffin down. And what we did was said, you've got to bury the dead. So they said, that's no problem. We'll dig a hole. Now, so instead of digging it 6 feet deep to put in the coffin down and put it into the dirt, they dug it 2.5 foot deep and a lot wider than normal, popped the coffin in there and covered it over with planks. So basically they were doing what we said, bury the dead. They were also doing what they wanted to do, which was to actually have the coffin inside. You can see the coffin inside of the hole there. When the body's decomposed, they take the coffin out of the hole, stand it on its end, and sharpen it up a bit there, and that allows the spirit to come and go up with it. In this particular area, if you get the book The Sky Travellers by Bill Gammage, you'll hear all about these people in this area. They had absolutely no fear of white men, none whatsoever. They believed that when people died, they went to a parallel universe and they just happened to be white. And when they were there, they did exactly the same things as they did in their own universe. So when white men turned up, it wasn't a case in a lot of places where they saw white men, they thought they were ghosts and they were going to cause problems. There, not a problem. They just come and went at freedom. So they would go, the spirit would go in and out of these boxes. This sharp and then here, this part here. Now you can see there's a femur in the bottom of the coffin there. But this is another interpretation of headstones. So everybody knows who they are. They're relatives, they're members of the family. And they can tell you who's who. On this image on the right, if you can see it, there's no, here you can see the eye sockets and the nose cavity here, and there's nothing. This poor old fellow had been coming out of the house. This is a very, very low set house, and his enemy was above him, and as he came out of the house and he looked up, the guy whacked him with an axe and cut the hole at the front of his face off. So that's how his skull ended up like that. So these spirits are like come and go, and now we come up to 18 months ago. 18 months ago, a very good friend of mine died, and this is his mausoleum. Inside there is the coffin, not buried or anything like that. Around it is his last clothes that he was wearing, the shoes and everything else. And the windows there are open to allow his spirit to come and go with free will. And if you note the design on the roof, it's very much like the wig that they were wearing then. This mausoleum belongs to a gentleman by the name of Samati Adiyui. He was on the Constitutional Planning Committee and a few other bits and pieces. Very, very nice guy, very smart bloke. So there we are, that's customs, cults and cannibalism. I'd like to sincerely thank the production guys, wherever you all are. Thank you very much in giving me the sound in a hurry. The entertainment team did a fabulous job looking after us. And the other day I said that I would bring my hat along, so if anybody's got any keener they want to throw in the hat for the Police Legacy Fund, feel free. And we're coming back up here on the 7th of October on the next cruise, and that will go into the legacy account to help pay for the education for the kids of policemen who get killed on duty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.